Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Shino, and we are back in Modded to the Magical Max. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing good. Last episode, we unlocked our mana bar. We can start using the rust-bound magic stuff. And since then, I've been going around and doing kind of some of this stuff right here, making sure that I can get a lot of these items together. And we're going to talk a little bit about some integration with some other mods, things that can help or things that can hurt you while you are doing your playthrough of this mod pack. We have also been laying out kind of the framework of where my next building is going to go. This area is kind of a reminder. This area here is going to be the house, and the house is actually going to occupy this entire space that you see here, not just that little area here, and this is the yard. No. This is going to be the whole house right here once it gets done. That area that I've laid out there, now that is going to be my workshop. I've got a workshop design that I am working on, and it is about 15 by 25. And so what I've been doing is, you'll see there's some dirt that's here. So there was like a hill that was over there. There was a hill over there. There was a hill over here. And I've been taking those hills down and filling in some of the low spots that were here. To kind of create a little more space for me to build. Everything else been going okay. I have been kind of keeping an eye on the traps, grabbing stuff off of here. I got a couple of fish, and we're getting lots of seashells too. Seashells serve kind of a decorative purpose in the game. There are some things with some of the mods that we're using that we'll be able to do with said seashells. So they're not entirely, pointless to have. But then there's also some vanilla aspects of the game that you can use seashells for. We'll go into that at a later date. And I did have to make me another makeshift staff because I was leveling up my mana here. So you see I'm up to 14 mana, getting ready to make that jump up to 15. But this does have durability, and that durability is used every time you cast. So it kind of wears down. You got to replace it every so often. So bear that in mind. I went ahead and created a charcoal pit and filled it and got it fired. Don't worry, though. In this episode, I will also walk you through and explain how to make charcoal, because there's some people who, maybe watching a Vintage Story playthrough for the first time don't understand how to make a charcoal pit. I want to make sure to explain that to everybody so you know how to do it. Having charcoal ready to go is great, because today we're going to take our first steps out of the Stone Age by making our first copper tools. In Vintage Story, there are two ways to create soft metal tools. Now, soft metal tools meaning copper and early forms of bronze alloys. You can either melt the ore and pour it into a mold, or you can pour the molten metal into an ingot mold and then reheat and hammer it on an anvil. In this episode, we're going to demonstrate both methods. Let's get started. All right, before we go out, before we sleep for the night, let's go ahead and take care of a few housekeeping items. For getting into making copper, there's a few tools that we're going to need specifically that we can't really do anything with right at this moment, but we're going to need to do. We're going to need to use them here pretty quick. So we're going to go ahead and get them started, because it does take a little time because they're clay forming. Now, you'll remember early on, we did make the crucible, which is the device that you use for melting your ores down into. So when you get the nuggets, you're going to put the nuggies into the crucible, then you got to heat it up, getting the metal to a certain temperature to get it to melt, and we'll go through that entire process of explaining that. But the crucible is there, that one's done. In addition to the crucible, though, we're going to need to make a couple of molds. Specifically, the hammer and the pickaxe mold are going to be very important. We're also, while we've got, we're going to be doing some stuff, let's go ahead and get our anvil put together, and also some ingot molds. Let's have those done. So let's get started. And I had talked about this, I think one of the first episodes when we started doing, or the third episode, whatever it was, when we started doing clay forming for the first time. I'm usually, what I will do is I will set up, once I select what I'm going to be making. In this example, we're going to start off with the hammer mold. And in this slot, which is slot number 6, I'm going to go ahead and hit the F key, and I'm going to choose 3x3. And then I'm going to come down here to number 4. I'm going to hit F, and I'm going to say autocomplete. And then I'm going to come to number 5. I'm going to hit F, and I'm going to put that on the 1x1. So now what I can do is I can scroll, and each one, if you look at the tooltip at the top, you'll see that it shows what form you have selected for that slot. So there's autocomplete, 1 pixel, and a 3x3. Makes setting up and doing your clay forming a lot easier. What also helps is holding the Alt key, and that locks in your view, and then you can move your cursor around. If you don't have that in, then when you move your cursor around, you're going to be moving your head too. And I don't know about you, but I get a little seasick when I do that. Okay, there we go. Those are going to fire up. They will take 20 in-game hours to do, so that'll be about midnight tonight on the game. And just for safety stakes, I went ahead and moved my firewood that was here out of the way. This can catch stuff on fire that's up to 2 blocks away. So things out to here that are combustible, it can catch and start a fire. So I had 2 stacks of firewood here that definitely would have burned up if I hadn't moved it. So yep, always be safe on that kind of stuff. Okay, good morning. Hearing bad guys, but don't see any bad guys. So must be all out in the trap, which it's fine by me. All right, let's do a couple things here first. Let's cast our spell here. This should get us to level up and increase our mana bar to 15 now. There we go. Yeah, so we're up to 15 now. Really enjoying doing that. That's there's a lot more that's going to be happening with that mod, and I'm so excited about it. And watching Vise, if you don't know, you can subscribe to Vise. He does lives where he works on this mod, and he's working on the code. Lots of fun to watch, so go check him out. Let's go over here and take a look, because it looks like, yep, our charcoal pit is done. So we're going to go ahead and crack into here. And there is all our beautiful charcoal. Harvest charcoal, you use a shovel, and you just dig it like anything else. It'll come out in layers. Usually a stack will turn into, double check, 8 layers. But you're not guaranteed to get 8. So this one you see 6. That one's also 6. So goodly amount, 38 pieces of charcoal. That's pretty good. All right, and this thing refills pretty easily. You'll see I've got 2 stacks here. So I'm going to, oops, not you. I'm going to go here, and to lay down, you hit Control Shift and you click, and that'll lay down like a bunch. And that's all that I've got. So let's go ahead and make some more charcoal. Okay, for this last one, you'll see there's an air gap here. So I just want to put 2 stacks of 32. So usually what I'll do is I'll end up make sure that I do 1 stack of 32, and then I'll swap this out and do another stack of 32. You don't want to go above that 32. It needs to be an exact amount up there. So see, I got 8 left. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this back up. For a charcoal pit to form properly, you have to have an air gap above the layer, or below the layer, or in front of the layer. Point is, you can only have 1 air gap for where to put the fire. And to do that, you have to lay down the grass like that, and it says fire pit and construction, right? And now I'm going to take 4 pieces of wood, and I'm going to shift, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And now you'll see the tooltip now says charcoal pit unlit. If you don't know, historically, a charcoal pit is where you have a fire that's burning that doesn't get a lot of oxygen to it, so it doesn't burn at a really high temperature. So you see it says lit. I'm going to close that up, and it says now, charcoal pit warming up. So it's going to start forming into a charcoal pit here shortly. You'll know it's a charcoal pit going because you'll see those black smoke particles coming up. And if you're using this, the mod that I have here, more information mod, it'll tell you that it's a charcoal pit. To get into the Middle Ages and vintage story, you will need to happen upon 40 nuggets of either copper or a combination of copper and tin to make a bronze alloy. Those 40 nuggets need to be used to make the tools needed to allow more advanced forms of mining. For the initial 40 nuggets, we're going to have to rely on good old-fashioned exploring and one age-old technique. Most of the time, what you're going to see are these little copper nuggets that are up here on the surface. And so I'm going to pick these up. Now you can either break them, or if you have an empty spot in your hand, you can right mouse click and it'll go ahead and pick it up. And as long as the tooltip icon or the tooltip item matches what you're picking up, you can continue to right click and pick those up. So with that, we now have 4 pieces of copper that we're going to be able to use. Now, the cool thing is that underneath here, right where we were just getting these at, if we dig down, we should be able to find more copper. And there it is. So this is called surface copper deposit, and it will always be found underneath those copper deposits that you see on the surface, or any ore deposit that you see on the surface. And it's always a good practice if you have set something up on your map as an indicator that there's something there. Once you get it, you'll want to clear that off so that way you don't go back to it. Okay, we've got a couple other deposits here of copper, so I'm going to go around and I'm going to gather a few more copper deposits, and I'll be back. It is almost time to go back out, but I had mentioned earlier on that there are some things you can do with Rustbound Magic and the way it integrates with other mods. And specifically, I want to talk about X skills. So to open up X skills, you hit O on your keyboard. That'll open up the X skills GUI. And here you'll see a list of, you'll see a collection of how they've been categorized. So you have survival, and then survival has subcategories of survival, combat, and temporal adaptation, collecting, farming, digging, forestry, mining, and husbandry, and then processing, metalworking, pottery, and cooking. So every time you do something with cooking, you'll end up getting experience points. And those experience points then turn into ability points, and then you can add your ability points on here. I've already gotten to level 4 on survival, so I have added in long life, huge stomach, and well rested. Well rested is one that I always recommend people get because when you sleep, you'll see the well rested effect over here means that anything that I do for the first 10 minutes after waking up will earn me an additional amount of experience. So if I wake up in the morning and cut down a tree while I'm well rested, that I get more points in forestry than what I normally would. The other one you want to focus, especially if you're doing Rustbound Magic, is on temporal adaptation, but you have to be careful in this area. Remember that with Rustbound Magic, we need to get temporally unstable. So you want to avoid the ones that make it harder to get you temporally unstable. So if you look at the one that I've used is temporal recovery. So it increases the recovery rate of temporal stability by 100%. That's very good because when I need to reload my mana and I got to drive that temporal instability down, move my gear down, it now fills back up twice as fast as it used to. So that's a really good one to get. The rest of these you want to be careful with. If you were to get something like temporal adapted, you'll see that it reduces the loss of temporal stability by up to 10%. And then an additional one. So if you got all three of them, it would be a max of 30% that you could, that would reduce your temporal instability by. So that would mean, hey, if you're getting in a rift, you're trying to get it down to 0, it'll take 30% longer to do that. So something to keep in mind if you're mixing matching mods. All right, I'm going to grab a little bit of this sand here, and I'm going to grab a little bit of this bony soil as well. And we're going to pop our heads out here. And that looks like a hailstorm. It is a hailstorm. My goodness. I love this area, but the longer I'm here, the more cursed it seems. Oh, the hail's getting me. That's why I was like, why am I getting hurt? Because it's a hailstorm, dummy. That's why. I have to find a place where I can go and do this without getting beat up by the hail. Here's a spot. All right, reason. So you got to stand in water when you do this. Okay. And I'm going to take this piece of gravel here and I'm going to set it right there on top of it. And I'm going to click it with the pan that takes a layer off from it. And then I'm just going to hold this right here with me and pan away. Now you saw my basket shake and you see there I got 1 copper nugget from that. It's not a guarantee that every time that you sift that you'll end up getting something. But the chances are pretty likely that you will. And you'll see with some items, you're limited, like on sand, I think you're limited to just some of the base nuggets, right? So, and stone. See, now I've got a piece of andesite stone and I got a nugget out of that. If we take a look at the loot table, it'll show you that from the different sands, and this is sand and gravel, it shares the same loot table. So 20% chance of getting the stone from what you're working, 15% chance of getting a copper nugget. The other thing that you can pan, of course, is the bony soil. And again, if we look at the loot table on that, you'll see that you have a chance of getting some better stuff. You see that you're not going to get a chance of getting copper from this, but you do have a chance of getting some of the books. You're more than likely going to end up getting some weapon pieces and some bones is what you're pretty much ready to get, which makes sense because it's bony soil. And then the third way that you can find copper in the early game without mining is by looking in these cracked vessels that are labeled for ore. It's not a guarantee that you'll have something in them that is the copper, but you will find something that's ore related. So marking these on your map and locating them whenever, or going and checking them whenever you get a chance, always a good idea. I think this is something that I had mentioned pretty early on in this playthrough, that I was concerned about the amount of copper that I could locate over in this area, the surface deposits, I guess I should say. Still concerns me a little bit. Not very often have I ever gone through a playthrough where copper has been this hard to locate. Oh, there's a bear. Run, run, run. Let's get out of here. He's a big black bear. It's the first bear I've seen over in this area. Cool. That's fun. All right, few little housekeeping things to talk about. So canned crops I had a little issue with the server, and I'll try to explain this because I'm not really sure exactly what happened myself. But I was able to get a hold of Bisect Hosting, which is the host for my servers. They're about the only server provider that I'll use anymore because their customer service is phenomenal. It's amazing. I mean, I sent them a message, told them what the problem was. They asked like 2 questions and boom, they got me fixed. Okay. That being said, though, there's always a few issues that you kind of have to go through whenever they go through and repair a server. And so they got the server repaired, and in the process, of course, all the ground that I had planted, I left this here. You can see it says it's still from C-A-N, being canned crops, but it doesn't have the nutrient levels like what you'd see for any other farmland. So while it says it's farmland, it's not registering as farmland. So I have to replace that. I went ahead and replaced all that. And all the crops that I had growing here didn't register as crops. They actually registered as if they were wild. And they had no specs on them. So when I broke them, I ended up getting default seeds again. So I took the flax that I had that was here that was still canned crops, and I went ahead and planted it out there to kind of redo my test for that. Okay, so that's one thing that happened. So there's been, I don't know, it's been probably a day and a half since I've recorded on the server started this episode. So in real life. So now I'm back at it. Okay, that's one part of it. Another part I want to talk about is every so often when you're dealing with Rustbound Magic, you will get these crystalline memories. So this is something that you can use to increase your magical experience. This is a plus 5%, which I'm assuming that's going to mean that when I do this, I should end up at 21.7. Okay, so we're going to sneak right click this thing as it says in the tooltip. It's a nice little aura effect. There we go. And then we take a look at it, and yeah, that's exactly what it is. So plus 5%, plus 5 points, however you want to look at it, got me just a little bit higher than where I was just a few seconds ago. Cool. Okay, so we are ready now to get started with the metal smithing. As identified, there's 2 ways that you can do metals, that you can work metal. You can either pour, if it's a soft metal, you can pour it into one of these molds. And that mold will then create the form for what you're doing. And this is good for dealing with soft metals. Okay. And what I mean by soft metals is that's metals that is pliable. So not iron, not steel, nothing like that. So primarily what we talk about is copper and bronze are the two that we are referring to here. I'm trying, folks, to be better at keeping my inventory organized. Anybody who's watched me play knows that I end up creating chest monsters everywhere, and I'm trying to do better. Let's see, I got all these out. I do. Okay. So our goal was to get 40 pieces of copper. We got 42. So for melting copper, it has to be in nugget form. It does not matter if you put all 40 in that spot. It doesn't matter if you spread them all out. It doesn't matter if you divide them up. It's all going to result in the exact same thing. A copper nugget will produce 5 units of copper. And if you look at these molds, it will tell you how many units that you need. So you need 100 units of metal to completely fill this pickaxe mold. What we need to do, though, is we need to get this melted down. And we have talked about some of the stuff that we can use for melting stuff. Some of the things that we can use as a fuel is we can use black coal. Which you'll see that gives you a burn duration of 84 seconds. And it also gives you a burn temperature of 1,200 degrees Celsius. So the black coal, the maximum temperature it can get to is 1,200 degrees. Firewood, the max temperature it can get to is 700 degrees. And it has a burn duration of 24 seconds. And charcoal has a burn temperature of 1,300 degrees. And a burn duration of 40 seconds. So what I will typically do is I will preheat the crucible up to the maximum temperature that I can get it with the use of other items. Now, if I had peat, which there's some just right outside, but I forgot to grab any. But if I use peat, I can use peat to get up to 900 degrees. So usually what I'll do is I'll start off with some firewood, I'll burn firewood until the temperature gets 700 degrees. Then I'll swap out the peat. Peat will take it to 900 degrees. And then I'll swap out the charcoal to get it up there. Whatever we do, however we do it, we have to get the smelting temperature to 1,084 degrees minimum. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this pit up. And then we're going to look at this as it kind of goes so we can kind of see what's happening here. This is the temperature of this. This is the temperature of the fire pit. So the fire pit is up to 280, 300 degrees. This is coming up to 200 degrees now. And again, we got to get this up above 1,084 degrees. So we're going to let this go with this in it until this temperature reaches 700 degrees, and then we'll swap out. We are closing in on that 700 degrees. It's going to take one more piece of firewood to get us all the way there. So that firewood is in there. It's loaded up and going, and that's going to go ahead and take it to 700 degrees. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop in my coal. And once this firewood burns up, which it only takes 24 seconds to burn up a piece of firewood, but once it's done, then it's going to grab a piece of coal. And it's going to start taking the temperature above 700 degrees. We're at 700. And there we go. Now we're jumping up and the temperature is going to continue to decline. You can see now at 700 degrees, we started to see some color change in the copper. Now that we're getting closer to that 1,000 degrees, we're going to see that temperature begin to change even more as we get closer to the melting point. And there we go. When it pops over to that side, that tells you that it's done. And now we can take that out, and because we have the tongs here, it's not going to burn us. We can pick that thing up, and we're going to pour it in. First place we're going to pour it into is going to be our hammer mold. And this is important. Make sure that you do your hammer mold and your pickaxe first. You don't want to pour it into there, because if you do, then you have no way of working that metal afterwards. Because once it goes into there, then you have to hammer it out on a anvil, and that means now you're going to have to make another 100, another 20 nuggets to get that, and then another 180 nuggets to fill that thing up. So this is the right way to go right there. One thing I am passionate about talking about is the ABCD. ABCD is an abbreviation that I use that says always be constantly doing. ABCD. Whenever you are playing this game, it's easy to sit here and just say, oh, I'm just going to sit here because I got to wait for this to do that. Well, that upper left-hand corner, there's a timer up there. And within Vintage Story, I think one of the worst enemies that we ever have to fight is time. And so if you have an opportunity to get stuff done or you're waiting on something, go ahead and take the next step. Go ahead and start progressing. So that's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start making the next tools that we're going to need for the rest of our survival, which is going to be a copper axe and a copper shovel. And with that, we now have our hammer head and our pickaxe head. Let's go ahead and make our first copper tool, our copper pickaxe. And let's make our hammer. There we go. I'm going to leave this hammer here. Put it right there. I've got the tongs sitting right there. I've now got my copper pickaxe. We now have the beginnings of what we're going to need for the next iteration. So let's go ahead now. We're going to wait for those to bake up. And that is our axe mold and our shovel. And then we're going to go get the metals that we need now to make our anvil and our ingots. So we're going to go down here to where we got that copper at, the copper nuggets were on the surface. And I told you, hey, dig down and we're going to find the rest of the copper. And there it is right there. So now with our copper pickaxe, and you see it says requires tool tier 2 to break, we can now go through and we can break this stone and get our copper. Now these deposits aren't real big and they're usually going to be poor or medium grade, and each grade will get you different amounts of copper nuggets. It takes a lot of them to kind of get you going, but this one seems like it might be a pretty good size. It is poor quality, so I'm only planning on getting maybe 2 nuggets per. But as you can see, I'm up to 16, 17, 18, 19, so I've almost got another 40 nuggets from this one. Good rule of thumb, if you are mining, realize that in this situation, I'm using copper tools and I'm mining copper. It's really important to remember that when you do use your tools that you're at least getting enough material back to replace them. You don't want to go out and use, let's say you don't want to use a copper tool to go out and use stone and never gather up any more copper. Then you would end up, losing your tool and then having to go and start this whole process all over again. Always make sure first investment that you make is in replacing the tool if it happened to break or if you happen to lose it. Not a bad haul of copper just from 2 deposits. That's actually really good. Now I've got another one. I actually got 2 more that I can go check to get the rest of those, but I may wait off on those just for now. Let's talk about something else here though. One of the byproducts of the mining process you'll see is collecting the stones. So as you break a rock, it's going to turn it into stones. But there are going to be times when you're going to want something like maybe you need that entire block. And so to do that, we need to actually free that stone from where it's sitting at, which means we need to break all the stones that it's connected to. And then one more behind. And when we do, that will release that whole rock as one unit. All right, the next thing I want to do is get my anvil together and a couple of ingots. And I'm going to go ahead and make another copper pickaxe. Remember me saying, hey, replace your tools. So that's what we're going to do. So we need 900 units for that. We need 100 for that. And we need 2 there. So that's 1,200 units. And there it goes. We've got our tongs in our offhand so we don't burn ourselves. And this is what made me fall in love with this game in the first place, is watching the copper being poured into the mold for the anvil. Look at that. That is gorgeous. That's beautiful. I love it. And again, we want to replace our tool. So we're going to make sure we've got another pickaxe ready to go because we're already at 50% durability on our other one. And we're going to pour up 2 ingots. So there we got 100 units, 2 ingot molds going, a pickaxe going, and our anvil mold going. All right, so these are the next kind of steps that we want to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and pour copper for the axe and for the shovel, for the pro pick and for the blade, and for these splitters. These splitters are a modded item. We'll talk about them in a little bit. I'll have to actually do 2 pours of those before they're ready. But these are the kind of the next steps that we're going to do in our progression in getting copper stuff. So let's go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need to get enough for 5 more. And we're going to take a look at our hammer. I think we're okay. We'll go ahead and do the 5 right now. All right, before we can start using the copper, we're going to need to gather up some of this ruined dirt, those ruins that we have here. Now, you don't have to do this. You could very easily go through. Oops, I'm in a too deep hole. I mean, nope. Oh, hey, what am I doing? I've got ladders. Hold shift, place the ladder. You can get out. Look at that rope ladder again, right click and it puts you out of the hole. Oh, hey, there's a, I didn't see that one. More black coal, cool. All right, what I was talking about. For us to be able to use the copper, we're going to need to make a forge. And you make a forge using the stones. We do this, H. Use those stones for making the cobblestone, and then you can use the cobblestone for making the forge. Those cobblestone, to make cobblestone, though, you will need to use up some of your clay. And so if you have ruins close by, this is what I would recommend doing. Just robbing the ruin and getting some of the cobblestone that you have there already. That way, you're just changing durability now for the cobblestone instead of using stone and clay, which both of those use durability to get also. With that, we get 2 new tools that we haven't seen before. This is the prospecting pick. And don't worry, I'm going to walk you through how to use that prospecting pick. You're going to be an expert of it by the time you get done watching me. But more importantly, there is our sword. Our sword is our primary defensive weapon. You're going to hear me use that word a lot. I don't use a lot of offensive attacks because I'm not a good combat person. But in short range, that's going to do a lot more damage, 3.8 hit points per strike. It does have 250 on the durability, and its attack tier is 2. If we were to look at one of our copper spears here, where's it at? You'll see 2.8. That's 3.8. The attack range on this one, though, is 3.5 meters. So this is a stand and deliver type weapon. So this is usually what I call a first strike weapon. This is final strike weapon whenever they get in close range. So I usually will try to use a ranged weapon whenever possible to deter something from attacking me or to at least wear them down before they get closer. What we're going to do now, though, is we've talked about doing the metal smithing and vintage story using the molds. Now let's talk about doing it using the anvil. For you to be able to work metal on the anvil, it's got to be heated back up. These all say that they're cold right now, so they're not going to do us any good in that state. They're not going to be malleable or be able to be formed with a hammer. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some coal to this forge, and I'm using the black coal for this. This is one of the instances I like to use black coal instead of charcoal. But if you've got a steady supply of charcoal, then by all means do that. So we're going to be playing around with molten metal. So of course you want to make sure you've got your wooden tongs in your hand, and you're going to want to have some space in your inventory for picking these up and working with them. We're going to watch that tool temperature. We're going to wait until it gets to 1,000 degrees. You're going to see it stop at 1,000 degrees. And that's when this is going to be ready to be worked. You can work the metal at a cooler temperature. It does not have to wait to be 1,000 degrees before you can start working it. If it gets to 800 degrees, you can start doing it. What we want to do though is we want to be able to use, we want to go through and form all of these quick enough that we don't run out and the ingots in here get cold and we have to reheat. You can add additional fuel to the forge without decreasing the temperature on it. You can't add additional metals in there. So once you get metals in there, if you add metal to it, it's going to start getting cold again. So I'm going to pick that one up. I'm going to place it on the anvil, and we're going to choose what we're going to do. Now, the first thing I usually do is a saw blade. And again, the mod that I have on here is autocomplete for the Napster mod. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put it on autocomplete, and we're just going to start hammering it out. And with this, it's going to move the voxels into the right frame to give us the finished form. If we didn't have this, we'd have to do this all manually. No, it's the same as you would be for doing clay forming. Only difference is you can't add back to it. That was a weird crash. Got it though. It's there. So we're going to form this into the saw now. Take that hot piece. Oh, it says an unfinished one. Okay. Bad crash. How's it done? Copper saw blade. There we go. Just had to simulate, apparently. There we go. We got our copper saw. All right, let's make up another one. This is usually where I like to make a chisel. And we're going to do just the plain vanilla chisel right off the bat. There we go. And we're going to test and see if this was a problem with the Napster mod or not. So we're going to do this one more time, see if it crashes. It may have something to do with me rotating it ahead of time. We'll see. If it crashes again, I'll test it another time without rotating. Interesting. All right, we're going to try this one more time. Let's make... Oh... Let's make the cultivator head. We're going to need that for can crops. So let's go ahead and do that one. And let's see if it... so I didn't rotate it that time. So we're going to check and see. We're going to do some troubleshooting here for Apache and see if this is an issue. Could be a conflict between two different mods. Yeah. All right, I'm going to make a copper knife blade, and we're going to do this the old-fashioned way and see if we have any additional. So I'm going to start off with a heavy hit. I'm going to hold the Alt key, and I'm going to hit the left mouse button, and that's going to splatter all those kind of everywhere, right? Now I'm going to go, and I'm going to use the upset up, and I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to pop this one over just to get it into spot. And there's no right or wrong on this one. I'm just kind of going through where I see pieces and where they're at. But usually I'll set it for one particular, like upset up. And then I'll just rotate the piece around to get it right where I need it to. We're going to test and see if I do this without using autocomplete. Is it gonna finish? The rest of this is now split. We're just getting rid of all the excess. This is all the bits and bobs that we no longer need for this form. So here's the moment of truth. Yeah, so it is with the autocomplete function. from Napster that's causing that. Cool. I'll have to report that. Now the cool stuff begins. So now that we have our copper saw, we can start making boards. With boards, we can now start crafting all kinds of extra fun things. For example, we could make, click on that. We can make slabs. We can make stairs. We can make the planks. There we go. Pretty simple. There's our stairs. And there's our slabs. Not only that, we can start getting into making fences. We can start making gates. More importantly, though, we can start making a better storage system. Now, to do this, we are going to need to bring it back up. We're going to need nails and strips to be able to do that. And any metal will do that. So I'm going to tell you, don't ever make nails and strips out of iron, steel. Just make them out of copper, tin, whatever you've got available, low grade. Do that. Now, typically, one of the first things that I like to make is a bucket. A wooden bucket, I think, is probably one of the most indispensable objects in this game. Having more than one bucket around is going to be a lifesaver for you. So that's, that's what I use my flax for, usually right off the bat, is to get me a bucket. Next thing I'd like to make, so I don't have to keep going up a ladder and going out, is to make myself a door. And you can make the early game door, the rough-hewn door, but those don't count for the room. So if I do this now and I put this door in like that, come inside, should now register as a room. It's not registering as a room. Oh, it wasn't registering as a room to begin with. Is that? Ooh. All right, one moment. All right, let's test this. So I filled in all the holes that were back here, and that didn't do it. I took the Nexus out. That didn't do it. So I logged back out, logged back in, and it's showing as a room again. So now let's take these out. The joys of modded gameplay, especially when you're doing a bunch of mods that a lot of people don't do together. All right, it's registered. Okay. Not sure exactly what was going on there, but it's working now. Next thing that I would like to make is from the primitive survival mod. It's called the Smoker. So we need boards across the top, and we're going to need the andesite cobble across the bottom. Go. I don't have any meat right now for doing that with. I'll have to get some meat together, and I'll demonstrate it probably in the next episode. I'll show how it's used. The other thing I need to use, and because we had the problem with the anvil and the auto completion, I'm not able to do it. I'm going to have to mix up some more copper ingots. But this episode's starting to get a little long anyway, so I think I'll do that in the next episode. But I want to demonstrate how to make the nails and strips so that we can start converting all of this over into chests. So we'll do that in the next episode. We'll start putting in our storage system and converting everything down. Give us more room, more storage space to storing all this stuff in. Cool. And then the last thing that I do want to do is, where did I do with that stone? Free stone, free stone. There you are. Take that. Give me a few sticks. And there is a early game household item that very, very handy. That's called the quern. The quern is going to be one of those items that is going to allow you to take your grain which I've been storing here. Let's take this spelt grain. We can put this in, and we can click up here at the top. And it's going to start converting that spelt grain into spelt flour. Now, while this only lasts for 100 days, this can last for a year, just in a normal environment. So this is a good way of storing up for later use. And there we've got our flour. And like I said, flour will last a lot longer. 1.5 years in that, 1.2 years there. So a way to sustain and keep some of your stuff around for a lot longer. All right, folks. Hey, that's going to do it for this episode. Lots of good progress made in the metalworking. We've got all of our tools. We've got a little bit of copper left, and I'm going to need a lot more. So between episodes, I am going to go around and visit all these other copper deposits that are everywhere and see if I can get a lot of copper together for being able to do some more metalworking here really quick. Next episode, though, we are going to start expanding out our home base, and we're going to get a little more magic-ier with this Nexus in the next episode, okay? Thanks for spending time with me. This is Shino, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.